Welcome to Chapter 13. We'll continue our discussion about the last P of the 4 Ps of marketing, promotion, and we'll focus today on personal selling and sales promotions. If you recall from last week, we introduced the idea of the promotional mix, or the 5 different strategies that organizations, companies, or brands can use to communicate with their audiences. Last week we said the 5 parts of the promotional mix were advertising and public relations, which we discussed in detail last week. The next 3 are personal selling and sales promotion, which we're going to discuss in this video lecture. And then the last one is direct marketing, which we'll discuss in the next video lecture. Personal selling is when a company, a business, or a brand uses personal presentations by a sales force to engage customers, to make sales, and to ultimately build those customer relationships. Personal selling works. It is by far the most effective of the 5 different promotional strategies. Compared to advertising, sales promotion, direct marketing, and public relations, personal selling is an incredibly effective way to build those important relationships with customers and to ultimately achieve a sale. But one of the reasons why not every single company uses personal selling as their promotional strategy all the time is because, in addition to being the most effective kind of communication, it's also by far the most expensive. Salespeople represent the company to the customers by performing the following kinds of activities. By prospecting, and we'll learn a little bit later exactly what prospecting means, but basically it means by finding customers for the company and communicating with those customers. By using selling techniques and servicing the needs of the customer, and by gathering information and building relationships. Those are the ways in which a salesperson helps the company to achieve their goals. Typically, when a lot of us think about personal selling or think of salespeople, many of us kind of get a cringy feeling because salespeople have a bad reputation. Many people perceive them to be pushy or manipulative or unethical or shady. And certainly there are salespeople who are like that. But good personal selling is more than just fast talk and smooth moves and sales shtick. It's really about creating those really important customer relationships, and if it's done well, it can be really, really effective. The role of the sales force is ultimately to provide that link between a company and its customers. Salespeople help with marketing and with sales by really helping the consumer walk their way through the 5 steps of the buying process. Good salespeople recognize and understand the buying process that consumers go through whenever they make a purchase, and that they recognize that their job is to help people work their way through each of the 5 steps, and salespeople can play an important role in each of those 5 steps of the consumer decision-making or buying process. So when you're designing your Salesforce team or your Salesforce strategy, it's really important that you take the time to analyze and plan and implement the exact actions or behaviors or activities that you want your sales force or your salespeople to conduct on your behalf as part of the organization. So there's some major steps that a company needs to take when they're developing their sales force. The first is designing a sales force strategy and structure. We're going to talk about these all in more detail in a moment. There's recruiting and selecting good salespeople. There's providing training for salespeople, compensating your salespeople, supervising your salespeople, and evaluating their performance. And we're going to go through each of these in more detail right now. There are three main sort of sales force structures that most companies use. They can sort of use one or more of them, but these are the typical ones. The first one is territorial, meaning you give your salespeople certain territory, geographic territory that they are responsible for. That geographic territory can actually be as small as a department in a store. So if you go into Best Buy, there are salespeople who work in the TV department. There are salespeople who work in the appliance department. There are salespeople who work in the um, computer department. And so they are assigned a territory. Now, yeah, you may see some people or some salespeople sort of cross over and conduct their sales activities in different areas as well, but many of them are assigned to specific territories so that they become experts in those particular product categories. Territory can also be organized geographically. So you can have a salesperson who's responsible for Charlottetown. You can have a salesperson who's responsible for Summerside. You can have a salesperson who's responsible for the Moncton area. So you can divide people territorially that way. You also can divide people up based on product. And really that is sort of a better example for Best Buy. Best Buy has people who specialize in different types of products and salespeople devoted to those products. And many companies follow that particular model as well, where they have certain people within the organization who are experts at selling a certain product item or product line for the company, and they don't really get involved in selling other types of products that the company might sell. And you can also structure your sales force based on the customer or segment of the marketplace that you are trying to target. So you could have, for example, salespeople who do only business to business sales and other salespeople who do business to consumer sales. You could have salespeople who do business to government organizational sales. So you can target based on the type of customer that you, or different targets or segments of customers that you are targeting. Salespeople can be specialized by customer or territory, product and territory, product and customer, or all three. And so many companies who employ salespeople don't use just one singular structural model for their salespeople. They actually may use multiple models to make sure that their salespeople are as effective at reaching the organization's goals as possible. The size of a sales force may range from only a few people to thousands and thousands of employees. Companies may use sort of the workload approach to decide the appropriate size of their sales force. The workload approach takes into account accounts that are grouped into classes based on size or status or the amount of effort required to maintain the account, and the number of salespeople is determined by that, or the number of salespeople needed to call on each class of account is determined. That's how you decide the sales force. What level of service, what level of sales engagement do you want your company to have, and how many people is it going to take to reach that particular goal for your organization? There's other sales structural issues that you may want to think about. Are you going to have an outside sales force? Outside sales people travel to the customer. They work primarily outside of the company offices and travel to the customer to do their sales activities at the location of where the customer is. Inside sales forces conduct their sales activities within the business, in their office, in a retail store, via the telephone or via the internet, but do so from the company's home base. They could include people like technical support people, sales assistants, and they even include telemarketers and online sellers. There's a third type of sales force structure called team selling, where people don't work independently. They work in a team environment with each member of the team taking on specific roles or aspects of the selling process. This is actually one of the hardest types of positions to hire for. Recruiting and selecting the right salespeople for the job is an incredibly difficult task for many organizations. A company should analyze the sales job that they want their salespeople to uh, conduct and hire based on the characteristics of its most successful people. I teach a whole class on personal selling and sales. It's a fourth year specialization class, and we spend a lot of time talking about the recruitment and selecting process and how you go about selecting good salespeople. Some of the ways you can recruit good salespeople is through referrals, and that's actually one of the more common and more successful ways of finding good salespeople is to talk to your existing salespeople and see who they might recommend as a good hire. You can go to employment agencies, or you can certainly advertise your position on the internet or on social media. You can post ads and notices in newspapers and on job banks. You can go to colleges and do recruitment on college campuses, or you can try to steal salespeople from other companies. And those are just some of the ways you can try to recruit salespeople to your organization. But the bigger challenge than recruiting is actually selecting the right person and figuring out what skill set and characteristics make a good salesperson. And that's actually not easy to figure out and to understand and to determine through a normal hiring process. Training your salespeople. The goal of training is to teach your salespeople about your different types of customers, how to sell to them effectively, and about the company's objectives, the organizations, of course, their products, and the strategies of their competition. Good salespeople are skilled and knowledgeable in all of those areas. There's all kinds of different types of training uh, options. There's in-house training where a company, especially if you have a really big sales force, might have a fairly sophisticated in-house training program. There's also outside training programs for salespeople. There's accredited programs where you can go and learn how to be a salesperson in general, but also there's some industry specific sales training. Let's say if you're working in the real estate industry or in car sales or in pharmaceuticals. There can be industry specific training as well. There's online training, but really from what I have read, and certainly in my fourth year marketing class, we talk about it a lot. One of the best ways to learn how to sell is actually to do it. It's one of those skill sets that where you develop a lot of your knowledge, a lot of your skills through actually doing sales. And that's one of the best ways to develop really good selling skills. Compensating salespeople. How do you pay salespeople? Well, there's two primary models of compensation for salespeople. The first one is a fixed amount or a salary. The salesperson makes a certain amount of money irrespective of how much they sell. Another type of compensation is called a variable compensation, where people earn commission or bonuses based on their performance as a salesperson. Very often, though, companies use a combination of a fixed salary amount plus a variable amount, usually in commissions or bonuses. If you're hiring a salesperson and they don't want to be paid any amount of their compensation through a variable amount, through a commission, that should be a real concern for you as a sales organization. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a salesperson, but it might suggest that they don't have the internal sort of motivation or competitiveness to be a good salesperson. Very often companies use sort of a combination of these two compensation models to really reward the strong performance of their best salespeople. Good salespeople are independently motivated and don't need a whole lot of oversight. But of course, like in any organization, you do have to supervise your people. You want to help to make sure that your salespeople are doing the right things in the right way and helping the organization achieve their objectives. So things that you can do to supervise salespeople is to monitor their call plan. So who are they going to be calling on? How often do they call on people? How many do they call on? Those sorts of things. To see how many people they're connecting with and communicating with on a regular basis. You want to look at their time and duty analysis. So how much time are they spending with customers versus how much time are they spending on paperwork or filling orders? Obviously, the more time they spend with customers, the more likely it is that they're going to be generating sales for your business. And there's also some, with technology, uh, uh, applications or software that really help to manage your salespeople and sort of collect the important data that you need to sort of measure and monitor the performance of your sales staff. Good salespeople are independently motivated and don't need a whole lot of oversight. But of course, like in any organization, you do have to supervise your people. You want to help to make sure that your salespeople are doing the right things in the right way and helping the organization achieve their objectives. So things that you can do to supervise salespeople is to monitor their call plan. So who are they going to be calling on? How often do they call on people? How many do they call on? Those sorts of things. To see how many people they're connecting with and communicating with on a regular basis. You want to look at their time and duty analysis. So how much time are they spending with customers versus how much time are they spending on paperwork or filling orders? Obviously, the more time they spend with customers, the more likely it is that they're going to be generating sales for your business. And there's also some, with technology, uh, uh, applications or software that really help to manage your salespeople and sort of collect the important data that you need to sort of measure and monitor the performance of your sales staff. So part of supervising people is motivating them, encouraging your salespeople to work hard and energetically pursue your sales goals for themselves and also for the organization. Things you can do to boost morale and performance in your organization is to watch the overall climate or culture in the organization and make sure it's really positive and productive rather than destructive and negative. You can set goals for your salespeople and encourage them to try to achieve or overachieve on those goals. And you can also provide incentives like bonuses, commissions, or even internal competitions are good ways to motivate salespeople to do a good job. How do you evaluate your salespeople? Well, you monitor their performance. You look at things like their sales, how many people they're calling, their expense reports. You monitor their profitability and performance data, and you evaluate them through personal observations, through things like customer surveys and talks with other salespeople to see how they're performing. Formal evaluations force management to develop standards for judging performance. And you need to understand and know what good salespeople are expected to do so that you can measure the performance of your salespeople against those standards. Of course, it's 2020, 2021. Social media is an important factor now in selling. These tools provide salespeople with ways to identify and learn about potential customers, a way to connect with and engage with their customers. They can provide customer value or create customer value through social media platforms and social media communications. Social media can be a good tool for closing sales and to ultimately nurture those important customer relationships. So understanding how and when social media platforms, whether it's online or mobile or the mainstream social media tools, how those can be used for sales is really important, and that's really growing in importance with respect to how salespeople are connecting and communicating uh, and sharing information with those all important customers. I quickly want to go through the steps of the buying process, or sorry, the steps of the selling process. Um, this is a good exam question, by the way. The first step in the selling process is to prospect and qualify your customers. So prospecting means generating a list of potential customers for your business. You can get these names from a variety of sources, including just cold calling or referrals or networking. There's all different kinds of ways you can find prospects, or basically prospects are potential customers. The second phase of this, though, is the qualifying. Just because you have somebody's name or you've been introduced to somebody or you've been given a contact doesn't mean that that person is a good potential customer for your business. So, for example, somebody may pass my name along to the Ferrari dealership in Toronto, the Ferrari car dealership. And they may decide, well, here's a name. We've never contacted Susan Graham before. We should give her a call. No, they shouldn't bother. If they did any research at all, which is called the qualifying, they would realize I'm actually not a good potential customer for them because I cannot afford to buy a Ferrari. So just generating a long list of potential customers' names is not enough. You actually have to work to make sure that those people are qualified. That's not all necessarily about money, meaning it's not about necessarily can they afford the product, but is the product and the customer a good potential match, and that's prospecting and qualifying. The pre-approach is when you do as much research about your potential customer as possible. So, for example, if you're a car salesperson and you know you have a potential customer coming in to see you at 3 o'clock this afternoon, you may want to get on social media and do a little creeping to find out a little bit about the customer. Do they have a family? If they do, how old are their children? Do they have pets? What are their hobbies? All those kinds of things can help you make a sale by making your sales pitch more targeted and specific to the customer. So you want to do as much research as possible beforehand. That's called the pre-approach. It's planning your strategy and gathering as much information as you can beforehand. If you're a business-to-business salesperson, it's about learning about your potential customer, the other business, as humanly possible. So there's a ton of work to be done in the pre-approach where you get as much information as you possibly can so that you're well prepared before you approach the customer for the first time, which is the approach phase of the selling process. This is the first time you have direct contact with that potential customer. It could be in person. It doesn't have to be. It could be over the telephone, or it could be, say, for example, through video conference or email. But it's the first time you actually have a personal interaction with your potential customer. And it's really important, of course, that that first interaction go well, because people make judgments about others within the first few seconds of those initial meetings. So it's really important that your approach goes well. The next phase is presentation and demonstration. This is where you actually show people or pitch your product or idea to your customer. You show them, you tell them all about it, you give them the specifics about the product and how it can solve the customer's problems and how it's exactly what the customer needs, etc., etc. It doesn't mean you're doing a formal PowerPoint presentation, but it's your opportunity to start discussing uh, the needs of the customer and how the products that you and your organization have for sale might be a good fit to solve those customer problems. You want to learn how to handle objections. So what happens if a customer is not interested or there doesn't seem to be a really good fit between your product and the customer? Well, you need to figure out how to handle those kinds of situations. It doesn't mean you lie to them and tell them what they want to hear. It's about finding ways to come to an agreement between the two parties. And in the personal selling and sales course, we actually do a whole section on negotiations and how do you negotiate with people. The second last stage is closing. When you and the customer come to an agreement that a sale is going to be made, that they're going to buy something from you, and you actually execute that transaction. And the last stage of the selling process is the follow-up. So that could include delivery, it could include after sales service calls, it could include just following up with a thank you note or a thank you call to see how the customer is getting along with their new product. The last slide I have about personal selling is to remind you that just like every other aspect of marketing that we've discussed so far, personal selling is about providing value to the customer. If a salesperson isn't adding value to the customer's experience, then the salesperson doesn't belong there. So personal selling is about providing value. It's about helping customers work their way through often challenging buying situations by helping them through each of the phases of the buying process. It involves listening to customers and really hearing what they have to say. It's about understanding what their needs are and coordinating the company's efforts to create lasting relationships that are ultimately built on a foundation of customer value. We're going to move on now and talk about sales promotion. This is the fourth of the promotional mix that we've been talking about last week, or in the last lecture, in this lecture, and in the next lecture as well. Sales promotions, not to be confused with promotions in general. Sales promotions are a specific kind of promotional activity that involves short-term incentives to encourage the purchase or sale of a product or service. So that there's the key. It's a short-term incentive. It's time specific, and it's designed specifically to encourage you to buy now, not to buy later or to think about buying sometime in the future. Sales promotions are specifically designed to get you to buy now. Sales promotions tend to target final buyers through consumer promotions, retailers or wholesalers through trade promotions, your business customers through business promotions, or your members of your sales force through sales force promotions. And so sales promotion strategies don't just have to focus on the end consumer. They can actually focus on other key stakeholders or buyers or members of the value chain in the selling process. Sales promotion are a growing type of promotional activity. Excuse me. There's a couple of reasons why they're growing in importance. First of all, many product managers or brand managers are maybe more concerned with short-term sales than long-term sales. If you are a sales or a brand manager, for example, or a product manager, you are probably evaluated based on your performance on a monthly or quarterly basis. And so if that's the mechanism through which you're being evaluated, then sales promotion is a great way to boost your numbers in the short term. Lots of your competitors are likely using sales promotion strategies to help differentiate their products and provide value to their customers. And so it's often you end up doing sales promotion activities because your competitors are doing it and you need to be in on that game too. We know that advertising, the effectiveness of advertising has declined in recent years as customers increasingly look for ways to avoid being exposed to advertising messages or have just grown distrustful of advertising messages. And today's consumers are more thrift oriented or value oriented, and sales promotions really help to connect with those value driven consumers. So consumer promotions are those that are targeted to end consumers like you and I, and it's designed to help us, to encourage us to buy products right now. it's actually very effective at in encouraging us to buy products right now. What it's not good at doing is building long-term loyalty between a customer and a brand. So it's a really good strategy to get people to buy or try a product. It's not a great strategy if your overall objective is to build brand loyalty, but it's pretty good at building brand engagement. Trade promotions are those promotional strategies targeted at retailers or wholesalers, which, for example, might encourage a retailer to carry a new product in their store, or to carry more inventory, or to buy ahead, so that you have a better idea of what the demand is going to be for your product, or to promote your product for you or on your behalf, or to give your product more shelf space, for example. So you can incentivize your retail and wholesale partners to do these things for you by offering trade promotions. Business promotions lead to business leads. They help stimulate purchases and reward customers and motivate salespeople, but these are targeted at other businesses, not necessarily businesses like retailers and wholesalers who are selling your product on your behalf, but these are for business customers who are going to be using your products for their own use. And so there's specific types of promotions that are targeted towards those kinds of consumers. So here are some examples of consumer promotional tools, or these are sales promotion tools that are targeted at consumers like me and you. So free samples. If you ever go to Costco on a Saturday around lunchtime, they're giving away free samples. And it's a great way to get people to try your product and induce them to buy. Coupons tend to be less popular than they once were, but there's actually entire television programs built around couponing. Um, these are little certificates that save people money when they buy a certain product. You can offer cash rebates um, for making purchases. You can offer price packs where you get a discount based on volume, or a certain savings when you buy a certain volume of products. You can offer premium. So for example, when you get a toy inside a Happy Meal, the toy is a premium. It's not as common today, but when I was a kid growing up, when you bought a box of cereal, breakfast cereal, there was always a toy in the box. That is considered a premium, a little freebie that people get when they buy your product. Other consumer-related sales promotion tools include advertising specialties. So you can use the advertiser's name or logo, and these things are given as gifts to consumers. You can have point of purchase displays. These are these displays that are featured in prominent areas in a retail establishment that capture people's attention. In a grocery store, they are the cardboard displays that are sort of beside the shelves. And basically what it's doing is you're taking your product off the shelf and putting it in a location that is going to likely get people's attention more so than if it's sitting on the shelf with hundreds of other products. You can have contests or sweepstakes or games. So Tim Hortons Roll Up the Rim to Win, or McDonald's Monopoly game. There's all kinds of contests and things like that where you give consumers a chance to win something. Or you can have an event like uh, you could sponsor a particular kind of event, or I know one of the pet stores here in town over the Christmas season, you can bring in your pet and get a picture of your dog or cat or hamster with Santa Claus, for example. So you can have these kinds of event-based marketing activities that could be considered sales promotion tools. Trade promotions are those sales promotion tools that are targeting retailers and wholesalers. They're used to encourage resellers to carry a brand or give it shelf space or to promote it in their own ads. Trade promotion tools include contests and premiums and displays, uh, much like the ones that are for consumers. It can be discounts or allowances for early purchase or for bulk purchases. It can be free goods. For example, we often see, uh, you know, if you're a convenience store and you sell Coca-Cola products, it's not uncommon for Coca-Cola to provide a Coca-Cola branded refrigerator for your store. You can have push money where there's an amount of money that the company provides to a reseller to help them promote the product for them. There could be special advertising items like signage, for example, that you could provide to your retailer or wholesaler to help them promote your product for you. So business promotions are used to generate business leads and stimulate purchases for business customers, for your business buyers. They could include things like conventions and trade shows or sales contests. These tend to be less sort of gimmicky, and they tend to be more professionally um, developed promotional tools, very sophisticated and often very expensive because we're typically talking about much more dollar value buying than would be for individual consumers. But trade shows and conventions and those sorts of things are very common types of sales promotions that target business buyers. So when you're designing or developing a sales promotion program, these are some things that you want to think about. What is the size of the incentive? How much money, for example, do you have to discount your product for? How much of a sales price do you have to give in order to incentivize people to buy? You don't want to give more money than you need to, or sell for a lower price than you need to, even if it's just temporary. So you have to figure out how big of an incentive do you need to give. Are there conditions that have to be met in order to achieve or to enjoy the incentive? So for example, maybe the incentive only applies if you buy a certain volume of product. So for example, in the grocery store, you often will see, buy one product for $2 or buy three for $2. Are there conditions that you need to achieve in order to enjoy that benefit? You got to determine how you're going to promote your promotion, and if you're going to offer a price discount at a retailer, how are you going to let your customers know about that? Is it going to be through the weekly flyers? Is there going to be signage in the store? How are you going to promote your promotion? How long should the promotion last? Because again, one of the key parts of the definition of sales promotion is that it's for a limited time only. So you have to determine how long the sales promotion is going to last. And then you want to evaluate, was the sales promotion effective? Did it help you achieve the objectives you wanted to achieve through the program in the first place?